pickup truck drives along a winding mountain road, sunlight filtering through the trees, birds chirping in the background. The driver, David, mid-30s, rugged and adventurous, is alone on his solo camping trip, eager to escape from his hectic life. David looks worried as the engine dies. He pulls over to the side, the truck coming to a stop in a cloud of dust. He checks his phone, realizing he has no signal. Looking around, David decides to walk to the nearby campground, which he knows is just a mile down the road. There was an ominous atmosphere in the dense forest. David arrives at the campground just as the sun sets, casting long shadows across the campsite. I had to work a little harder and put up the tent while it was spoiling, but the air was unsettling. The tranquility of nature creates a calming but eerie state. As dark falls, the sound of crickets fills the air. David sits by the fire, roasting marshmallows, when he hears a distant rumble. He glances up to see headlights cutting through the trees. A rusty old truck pulls into the campground, stopping awkwardly a few sites down. A girl, around 20, with disheveled hair and an intense expression, steps out. She walks towards David, her steps oddly deliberate, her demeanor unsettling. Their conversation is brief. The girl says something strange about not being safe at night, before hurriedly walking away. David feels a chill and finishes his marshmallow before retreating to his tent, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. Late at night, David wakes up suddenly to the sound of rustling outside his tent. He sits up, heart racing. His eyes peer into the shadows flickering among the trees, accompanied by quiet whispers. At that moment, a shot rings out from the forest, followed by another, and David's eyes widen with fear. He peeks out of his tent, the fire nearly extinguished. In the dim light, he can barely make out figures moving through the trees. The girl from earlier emerges, looking frantic, and whispers for him to be quiet. "They're coming," she says, her eyes wide with terror. David's instincts kick in. He grabs a flashlight and steps out, trying to make sense of the chaos. As they stand together by the dying fire, David hears footsteps approaching. A strange man emerges from the shadows, wearing a tattered jacket and an unsettling grin. The girl recoils, and David feels instant dread as the man approaches, asking too many questions about their plans. "You two shouldn't be out here alone," he says, leaning in too close. David glances at the girl, who looks as terrified as he feels. Suddenly, David points the flashlight at the man's face, exposing a wild look in his eyes. "We're just camping," David asserts firmly, even though his voice trembles. The man's smile fades, and he watches them silently, his presence menacing and predatory. The next morning, shaken but resolved, David decides to leave the campground. He hurries down the road, eventually reaching a gas station. As he fills up, he notices the strange man from the campground lurking in the shadows by the pumps, watching him intently. Heart racing, David returns to the cab only to feel a cold sweat run down his back as he sees the man approach the glass, his expression unnervingly calm. David quickly drives off, glancing in the rearview mirror to see the man standing in the gas station's parking lot, waving slowly as he disappears from view. Tired and on edge from the 2-hour drive back, David pulls into his driveway. He enters his home cautiously, feeling paranoid. The atmosphere inside feels heavy, like something sinister lurks within the connection of the world outside. Suddenly, he notices his front door slightly ajar. As he steps inside, he hears a sound from the kitchen, clattering, like someone rummaging through his belongings. Alarmed, David moves slowly, listening intently. Just then, a man, dressed as a police officer, walks into the living room, pointing a flashlight straight at him. "Is everything okay, sir? There's been reports of a strange vehicle in the area," he says, voice too smooth and friendly. David's instincts scream at him to run. He fakes compliance, backing away slowly, Sensing danger, the false officer, with a menacing grin, advances, revealing a gun tucked into his waistband. David bolts out of the house just as the man reaches for him. David runs past his truck, heart pounding as he makes a desperate call to 911. He tries to catch his breath, but the unnerving occurrences of the past days replay in his mind. Voices in the woods, a girl with fearful eyes, a strange man watching from behind trees, a fake officer with a sinister grin. Each scene flickers through his mind in rapid sequenced flashes. As he stood there, eyes straining against the thick veil of darkness, hope flickered within him like a dying candle. His heart pounded a ferocious rhythm, drowning his thoughts in a cacophony of fear and desperation. He imagined the faces of those he loved, their worry and dread mingling with his own. Each heartbeat was a reminder that time was slipping away. Suddenly he heard footsteps behind him, slow and deliberate, echoing ominously through the stillness. Panic surged within him as he turned to face whatever menace lurked in the shadows. But before he could comprehend, a sharp blow struck him from behind, and the world dissolved into an abyss. A cold, paralyzing fear wrapped itself around him, squeezing the breath from his lungs. Only the sound of a distant siren broke through the suffocating silence, drawing him closer to consciousness. As the wail grew louder, reality came crashing back. He felt the cold ground beneath him and the bitter taste of metal in his mouth. His mind raced, desperately piecing together the fragments of what had happened. The sirens became a beacon of hope, cutting through the darkness that had threatened to consume him completely. As he tried to lift his heavy eyelids, he realized he was not alone. Light pierced the shadows, and the red and blue glow of emergency vehicles flooded the scene. Paramedics rushed towards him, their faces a mixture of concern and urgency. He caught snippets of their conversations, words that grounded him back to reality. "Stay with us," one of them urged. "Help is here."